So good morning once again to everyone. Welcome back to another class. Um, which one of the I wonder if you guys you're seeing 1.1, but you're only seeing one window. I'll share. Give me a second. I'll have to share 1.2. Let me know if you're seeing chapter 1.2.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yes, sir.
So we're continuing chapter 1.2, and let me zoom in up to that point there. So just one quick question before we begin. When it comes to input devices, there are two types of input devices. Can anybody tell me what are the two types that we're supposed to be looking at? Anyone? No one? What are the two types of input device you're supposed to notice off of your head?
Sure, manual and direct data entry.
Manual and direct data entry, but the first one you have to complete it. Manual input devices and direct data entry devices. But very good though, very good. So those are the two input devices, the two types we'll be looking at. So we've already completed all of the manual input devices. The important things to remember is that for each of these devices, you have to know how they function. So two things basically you have to know. How the devices function and what category do they fall under. So for example, the keyboard, the keypad, the mouse, how do they function and what type of input device are they? So in addition to those manual input device, we looked at the document scanner, the microphone, the digitizer, the webcam, the digital camera, the digitizer. For touch sensitive devices, we looked at touch screen, we looked at the touchpad, the pointing devices, stylus, and so on. Remote devices, biometric systems, and so on. Those are all manual input devices. So now we're going to look at direct data entry devices. And we're going to look at how does a direct data entry device work. Alright, I don't have my list on me here, so I think I can't remember who would have stopped that for the reading. Give me a second. 90. We'll stop at Fazil. Okay. So we have to continue from Fazil. So Gabrielle Smith. Can you read the two paragraphs there for us?
Daily house phone is big.
Gabrielle?
There. Direct data entry or DDE devices. A direct data entry device can transfer information automatically from a document, such as a form or barcode, into the computer. You do not enter the information manually. These devices are used when large volumes of data must be entered into the computer quickly. Previously, it took a relatively long time for a supermarket cashier to add the cost of your grocery items using a cash register. Nowadays, barcode systems make this task much quicker. There are various DDE devices available. As with manual input devices, different DDEs are suitable for different purposes. Some examples are explained below.
Great. So, so we're looking at what is a direct data entry device. So when it comes to the manual input devices, we would have said that it inputs the data manually. So when we looked at that definition there, you had to input the data yourself. You had to do it yourself. So the direct data entry device now is basically going to do the opposite. It's going to enter your data automatically for you. So instead of you manually typing in the data, you manually selecting all of the data, it is going to collect all of those data and input it automatically for you. So there are different forms of direct data entry devices. There's different ways that it collects those data and input it, and those devices we're going to be looking at next. So some examples are the smart card, the barcode reader, optical mark recognition, and so on. Now, so the main takeaway here is that when it comes to the direct data entry devices, they enter data automatically. That's the first main point to remember. Now, the other main point to remember is that it is used for large volumes of data. So it's not like the one entry data. Like for example, if we have a document and we're gonna type information into that document, that's going to be a one-time thing. Maybe one day you type in information and you finish the assignment and that's it. You won't use the document anymore. So, but when it comes to direct data entry devices, you are using them because you want to enter a lot of data. You want to enter large amounts of data quickly as possible. So that's why we would use them. So, for example, an example of this case is a supermarket. When you go to a supermarket, you would see those persons who buy basically a lot of items. You might be one of them. Your parents might go to the supermarket and they would stock up basically for the entire month or maybe for the entire week. And they buy quite a few items, maybe 20, 30, 40 different items. Now, if the cashier was to manually, if they were to use a manual input device, if they were to manually put in all of those items, how long do you think you would spend at that supermarket? How long do you think? If you were to type in each name,
So like 1 hour?
1 hour, sometimes you might even spend a whole day. Because they might take the time, type in the name, type in the price, do whatever they have to do. So it's gonna take time. But when you go to the supermarket, how long do you have to wait for them? If you have one item, how long do you have to wait for them to cash that one item?
2 minutes?
A minute or two.
A minute, 2 minutes, sometimes less. Well, it depends on how fast the cashier wants to move. But if the cashier is feeling that day, then she's gonna move at a reasonable pace, and you might get out of that supermarket in less than a minute. And the data for that item would have been transferred into the computer. Everything would have been calculated, the VAT, the discount, the total, everything calculated, and all would have been done within a minute. And you're out of the supermarket, already paid and everything. You get back a change, everything was done in that minute. So it's because of direct data devices. It is collecting that large amount of data and processing it as quickly as possible. How much people earn in the supermarket? You're at the cashier. That's what I was talking about. All right. So a supermarket is a good example of making use of a direct data entry device. So as mentioned, there are different direct data entry devices, just as how there are different manual input devices. So let's look at some examples. And the first example is that same barcode reader that supermarkets would actually use. So let's see how a barcode reader would function. So our next reader is going to be Govinda. Govinda.
Yes, sir. Where I read, I just joined. Came in.
You're reading barcode reader, the two paragraphs.
Okay. Okay. A barcode reader is a group of vertical bars on different widths. Barcode barcode barcodes are found on almost all products you buy. Group of bars are used to represent different numbers which are often printed above or below the barcode. The numbers normally included in a barcode for a product represent its country of origin, manufacturer, and item code. The price is not included in the barcode. Barcodes are read into the computer using a wand or fixed scanner. There are also camera-based barcode readers. Barcodes are not easily damaged and can normally still be read if they are creased or slightly wrinkled. They can be printed using a normal printer and ink, and so are cheap to produce.
Very good. All right. All right. We'll come to that paragraph just now. So I'm sure all of you have seen these vertical lines before. Have you? Where have you seen them?
On the back of something that we bought.
Right. So basically, almost a lot of items today you would see to the back of it. Canned products, bottles, drinks. You would see some form of a barcode. Now, that barcode, as mentioned here, it's a group of vertical bars of different widths. So if you notice, vertical bars and some have different widths, and that would represent the different forms of data. So the different bars correspond to different numbers. And those numbers are either below or at the top of the barcode. As you can see in the image here. Now, what does a barcode contain? What data does a barcode contain? Because remember, we are transferring data with this device. So what data does it contain? Well, it has the country of origin, it has the manufacturer, it has the item code. Those are some of the information the barcode would have. So instead of manually typing in the country of origin, manually typing in the manufacturer, manually typing in the item code, all of that would automatically be transferred into a computer. Now, one thing to note is that barcodes do not contain the price. Anyone wants to tell me why they think barcodes do not contain a price?
Sir, could I try?
Yeah, go ahead.
So most of the time, since my father owns a business, usually he changes the price sometimes because in the country they sell the people who he buys the stuff from raise the price. Sometimes he raises it also, and most of the times the prices of the items don't stay one price.
Very good, very good. That is exactly the reason why barcode does not have the price. Because price is something that is constantly changing. And remember, the width of the barcode represents the data. So if the price was to change, that means you have to go and change the barcode if you were to put in the price every time. And that would be too much of a hassle. And every time the price change, imagine if every day the price change, you would have to change that barcode every day. So it wouldn't make sense to do so. So information in the barcode would usually be information that does not change often. And that's going to include the item code, country of origin, who made the product, and any other information that might be necessary and it does not change regularly. So it would be in the barcode. Now we have two types of barcode. We have the wand barcode and we have the fixed scanner. Now I know you're not seeing my other screen. Let me try and see if I can share my entire screen. Are you seeing Are you seeing my screen?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No? So something is wrong with sharing the entire screen. Alright. So I guess I'll have to try. I wonder if I share this page here.
Sir, we still can't see it.
Are you seeing the 1.2 PDF?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, good. Well, once you're still seeing that PDF, let me see. I don't think if I switch. Okay, you seeing are you seeing the other tab in the browser?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, good. Well, I mean we can use it from here. Very good. So we can work from here. So what we're looking for is how to spell Google first, and then we're gonna look for the wand scanner. So this is an example of a wand scanner. It's basically something that you would hold and it would scan the item. I'm looking for one that you might see in a supermarket. Supermarket. So this might be one that you would see in a supermarket. This is a wand scanner. So you would hold it in your hand and it would scan the item. Now a fixed scanner would look something like this here. So it's gonna stay in one position. It's not gonna move. So have any of you ever went into Bounty? Bounty has it, and it's not at the register. At certain parts in the supermarket, you can actually go and scan the item, and it will tell you the price. Anyone ever saw that?
Yes, sir. The service be on the wall.
Right. So that there is a fixed scanner. And this one here also is a fixed scanner. When you go to the cashier and they're sliding the item across that screen, that there is also a fixed scanner. So it's scanning that barcode so it can read the information. But so what are the advantages of the barcode? Well, as you can see here, the barcode is not easily damaged. So even if you crumble it up, once you can get it to base on, if you unfold it and you can still see the bars, it can still work. So it's not easily damaged. You can crease it, you can wrinkle it, and it will still be able to work. Now, the other advantage is that you can print it with a normal paper, you can print it with a normal ink. I would think you could even dry it if you want, and it would be able to work. Because it's not anything technical that it requires that it needs a special ink, it needs a special printer, it needs a special paper. Any paper, any printer can basically make a barcode. So even you can make a barcode that represents something. The other advantage is that it is cheap to produce because it's regular paper and ink. Alright, the next paragraph. Irshad, can you read that for us? Irshad? We don't have Irshad. Italy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Irshad, please read the paragraph.
A barcode is used to enter data directly into a system. The data collected from the barcode is used to produce customers' bills and to tell a store what has been sold. Goods can be automatically be recorded, reordered. These systems known as electronic point for sale (EPOS) systems able large accounts of data to be input very quickly and accurately.
Alright,
Accurately.
good, very good. So, your barcode reader, as mentioned already, it enters data into the system. So it would usually be connected to a computer to transfer all of those data automatically. So what is it collecting the data for? To produce your customer bills. And it would also basically tell the store what was sold. So at the same time the item was sold, it would record it in the system that look, one item was sold, one can of baked beans was sold, so that means in the inventory we have one less can of baked beans. So they would have another system in place whereby if the stock levels reach a certain limit, say maybe 20 can of beans in the inventory, then it would automatically reorder those can of beans for you. So that's how they would usually make all those systems work together. So this system here of scanning the item, calculating the customer bill and so on is called an electronic point of sale system. So that you can input the data, calculate the data, and so on very quickly and accurately. All right, any questions or comments before we move on? Irshad, I'm gonna mute you. Any questions or comments before we move on? All right. So next we're gonna look at the smart card. Let me see. Alright, so that person, the next reader is gonna read the first two paragraphs, and the next reader is gonna read the next three. So, Italy, can you read the next two paragraphs for us, starting from smart card?
Smart card. Millions of people now pay for their shopping using credit, debit, or store cards. The magnetic strip on the back of such a card is read as it is being swiped by a salesperson. This swiping transfers account information and the cost of the goods into the banking system. This type of system is referred to as electronic funds transfer at point of sale, EFTPOS.
All right, good. Let's look at this paragraph and then we're gonna move on. So, notice we have two terms here, and notice their similarities. Notice we have at the top of the screen electronic point of sales, and at the bottom we have electronic funds transfer at point of sales. It's very important for you to remember those two terms and basically what they mean. So the one above, electronic point of sale, this one that we just looked at, is basically a system that is set up so that it's like a supermarket system. It records the item, it inputs the data for the item, calculates the item, so that you can get a fast, smooth flow with the supermarket, recording, calculating, and doing all of that. The other one now, electronic funds transfer at point of sale, is basically the same. You're making a purchase, you're selling items, whatever the case may be, But how does the money get transferred? The funds, if you notice the first part here, electronic funds transfer. So the funds are basically the money is going to get transferred electronically in this case here. So the point of sale system is going to be a system that is used for recording, calculating, and managing the items. And the other terms refer to how is it being used electronically, how is the money being transferred electronically also. So going back to the smart card, the smart card would usually have a magnetic strip. Have any of you ever saw your parents' bank card?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So cards, or even the customer card that you would get from Bounty, DSL, and so on, they would have this strip at the back of it that contains the data. Now, the important part to remember here is that when that card is swiped, what is transferred? Well, account information is transferred. So that's going to be your name, your address, maybe your contact information, any personal information that would be required for you to process that transaction. That's going to be transferred. And the cost of the goods is going to be transferred. Because remember, you're buying something. You're either buying something in store, but you're using the card, or maybe you're buying it online, but the funds has to transfer electronically from your bank to the bank of whoever you're buying it from. So all of that information has to be sent to the banking system so that they know you are basically transferring this funds so that you can purchase this item. So that's the information that gets transferred automatically. Remember, we're looking at direct data entry device, and data gets transferred automatically. All right, Italy, you can continue with the other paragraph.
To gather information from the card, it is swiped through a machine which quickly and accurately reads the magnetic pattern. If the magnetic area on the card is scratched or gets soiled, then the information stored on the card can be corrupted. Such a card is used by businesses to reward loyal customers.
Great. So as mentioned, not only is it used for credit cards and debit cards and so on, like for example, Bounty, DSL, when they have customer cards, they would use that similar card for that purpose. Now, if you notice here, I underline the disadvantage. If that area gets scratched or if it gets soiled, it can corrupt the data. Now you can look at it as the opposite to the barcode. Remember, we looked at the barcode, that if the barcode is damaged, if you crease it up, if you crumble it up, once we can basically smooth it out back evenly, we can see the data, we can see the bars, it can still be used. But whereas a smart card, if that area is soiled, if it is scratched up, if it is damaged, it will corrupt the data on it. So that's the disadvantage here of the smart card. Alright, our next paragraph, we're going to have Jewels. Can you read for us? Jewels?
Yeah, 1 second, sir. Sir, what paragraph do I have to read once because the Wi-Fi is kind of bad?
Started from a card.
A card that does not rely on magnetic strip is also now appearing. It is a built-in electronic circuit and set set of gold contacts. Putting the card in a special reader input the information that is held in the circuit. Such cards are called smart cards. They are more sophisticated than magnetic stripe cards.
Alright, continue. The other two paragraphs.
Smart cards, unlike magnetic strip based cards,
No, you missed a
can
paragraph.
carry.
Although,
Where? Okay. Although smart cards are often called input devices, they are actually simple storage devices. When the card is put into a machine, data can be read from the card or written onto it. A smart card can store much more data than magnetic strip. Smart cards, unlike magnetic based cards, can carry all necessary functions and information on the card. Therefore, they do not require access to remote database and at the time of the transaction.
great. So we have a lot of information here. So please tell me if you guys are going to understand everything that I'm about to tell you. So, as mentioned already, we have the smart card and it's used for online purchases basically. Basically for shopping without using actual money. So you already know that. These debit and credit cards are used for purchases without money. And the funds are transferred electronically. Now, when it comes to the smart card, when it comes to these cards, there's actually two types of them. If you notice here, we have two types. We have the smart card and we have the magnetic swipe card. So we have two types. The smart card is the one with the gold colored contacts. And the magnetic swipe card is the one with the magnetic strip. So if we were to look at the image, notice if we were to search for a smart card, notice what we're getting here. We're getting a card with a gold colored contact. So that is how the data is transferred. And if we were to look for a magnetic swipe card, notice what we have here. We have a card with a magnetic strip, and the magnetic strip is usually going to be black. So that is why if you damage that black area, it's going to corrupt the data. And let's see what else. So those are the two cards that basically you guys have to remember. Now, what is the difference between the magnetic swipe card and the smart card? The difference is the information that they have. The smart card can actually hold more data than the magnetic swipe card. So here, a smart card can store much more data than a magnetic swipe card. So because the the smart card would have a circuit inside of it. I'm looking for the part that says that. Right, it's here. So that smart card would have a built-in electronic circuit. And that is what is being used to store the data. So that's why it can also be called a storage device, because it is storing the data on the card. So it's kind of like if you have an SD card and it's storing data, but just that this can only store a smaller amount of data, and it is stored on that electronic circuit, and it is read through those gold colored contacts. Now, what is the benefit? What's the disadvantage? Well, with the smart card, the last paragraph, with the smart card, because it can carry more information, you basically don't need a connection to a bank. because all the information is on the card. These smart cards, you don't need connections to the bank. So, for example, if the network is down, then you cannot use a magnetic swipe card because the magnetic swipe card, it doesn't have all the information on it. It has to connect to the bank in order to transfer information, in order to get additional information. So that's the advantage and the disadvantage. With the smart card, you basically don't need a connection to your bank because all the information is on the card. It can carry all the necessary functions and information on the card, whereas the magnetic swipe card is going to require that connection in order to process your transaction. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright, great. So the main thing to remember when it comes to these cards, we have two of them, the smart card and the magnetic swipe card. Alright, great. So let's move on to the other direct data entry device. And remember, for these smart cards, these cards, we're looking at direct data entry device. And remember, it's transferring all of your personal information, all of the items you bought automatically. Next, we have the optical mark recognition, and our reader is going to be Kezia. Kezia,
Yes, sir.
can you read for us?
Okay, sir. Optical mark recognition, OMR. There are various ways of inputting letters, words, and numbers automatically into a system. For example, when you buy a lottery ticket, you fill in the slip by putting lines through sets of numbers on a grid. This slip is then fed into a machine that reads the mark.
Continue.
The computer system turns each set of marks onto numbers and enters them into the job. This method of entering data is called optical mark recognition, or OMR, and relies on precisely positioned marks on a form being read by a special scanner. This data is then processed by the system. If you have multiple choice tests, if you have multiple choice tests as a part of your examination, you will probably have to answer them on an OMR form. These answer sheets will be passed through a scanning system to mark your answers. This way of inputting data is fast and accurate. OMR is therefore used to read the data that has been added and then all the data that can be transmitted to the computer automatically. The final information can then be produced without any need for human intervention.
Great. So let me zoom out a bit. If you notice, we have about three devices here that we can compare in terms of the acronyms. We have OMR, OCR, and we have MICR. So we have optical mark recognition, optical character recognition, and magnetic ink character recognition. And the easiest way to remember them is to basically remember the name. If you remember the name, it basically tells you what it does. For example, the first one that we're looking at is optical mark recognition. That is basically looking for a mark. So there's a document, like for example, this image that you see in here, this document, we are going to make marks onto the document. And the scanner now is going to scan the document for the marks and input all of the data into the system. For example, when you guys did common entrance and you were doing the multiple choice um, test. How did you mark your answer? How did you put your answer? What did you have to do?
Shade the circle.
Good,
Create a limit circle.
good. So you have to shade a circle, or in some, there's an exam where you have to cross the letter, put a line through the letter. I remember what exam is that. But that is the that was you're basically doing what you're basically doing there is putting a mark on that OMR form. So when you put that mark, the system would scan it and input the data. If, for example, with that exam, if the answer that you put was wrong, what would it tell you to do? If the answer was wrong
Sir, can you please repeat?
on that exam that you did at common entrance, if the question, sorry, the answer that you would have shaded, if you shaded the wrong answer, if you change your mind and you want to change the answer, what would you have had to do?
So you would have had to have erased it.
You would have had to, one more time,
Erase the
Erase it.
answer.
erase it. And how would they tell you to erase it? When they tell you to erase it as clean as possible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. And so I hope you guys have seen the reason why. Because if you didn't erase it as clean as possible, when it is being scanned by the system, it's going to pick it up as a double answer. So you're going to see that old shading and you're going to see a new shading, and it's going to say that you selected two answers, and the scanner will basically either mark it as wrong or give it error or whatever the case may be. So that is why these OMR forms, you need to mark them as clear as possible so that it can scan the data. So that's basically the OMR form. It's a form that has data on it, and you would usually mark the data with some form of pattern. Like for example, this lotto ticket, you would mark it with an X, and when it is scanned, the mark would be translated into the number. And that data there now, would be automatically entered into the computer. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Great. So remember, optical mark recognition is looking for a mark. So now the next one is optical character recognition. So based on the name here, what do you think this one is going to look for?
Sorry for the characters.
Characters, very good. It's that simple. I've told you guys already that a lot of the things in IT, the name basically tells you what it does. So Lanesia, can you read OCR?
Another way of entering handwritten or printed text into a computer system is to scan the text using an optical character recognition (OCR) program. The scanned text is turned into a file that can be edited, reformatted, and printed by a word processor. The accuracy of OCR is variable and can be poor, particularly in the original pages to be scanned are of poor quality. OMR and OCR are often used together in a turnaround document. A turnaround document is one which has some unique information printed on it by a computer with other information which needs to be edited by a human. It is then fed back into a computer a second time to transfer the added information to the computer.
Very good. So we're looking at the OCR now. Now the OCR, as the name indicates, is going to be looking for characters. So it's going to scan those characters. So for example, like if you have a document, if you wrote a letter or some form of document. It has characters on it, it has letters, it has numbers, symbols, and so on. And basically, you want to edit that document, you could scan it into the system and it would transfer the text into the computer so that you can edit it, you can reformat it, you can reprint it, and do whatever you want with it. Now, the quality of the scan obviously is going to depend upon the quality of the document. So if the original document has a poor quality and you scan it, don't expect the scan to be of high quality. So if you can hardly see the characters, the scanner would not be able to do it also, unless it's a really sophisticated OCR device that is scanning the information. But so now the OCR and the OMR are actually used together. So, as remember, OMR is looking for marks, and OCR is going to be looking for characters. So, if you have a document, sometimes you might tell someone to mark off the answer, and then in some cases, they might have to write in something. So, it can be on the same document, and on the same file, on the same page, or so on, but the two service or the two feature can be used together. An example of a turnaround document. This term here is very important to remember. It usually has information on one side, and on the other side, you can write in your information. For example, when you go to the supermarket, like for example, DSL, Bounty, and so on, and if you ever saw, they share out a flyer, and at the back of it, you have to, on one side, they would tell you what's the promotion, and behind of it, it would tell you to put in your name, put in your address, and all of that.
Yes, sir.
Right. So that there is an example of a turnaround document. On one side, it's going to have information telling you what is happening, and then on the other side is where you write in your personal information. So like if you're applying for something or you're registering for something, it's going to, you put your information at the back, and OMR or OCR would scan that information into the system. Alright, we have two more devices to look at. Are you guys following so far?
Yes, sir.
Alright, so our next device, the MICR, we're gonna have Nathan. Nathan,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
can you read for us?
From magnetic in character recognition.
Yes.
To where?
To the end of the so expensive.
Okay. Banks process millions of checks each day. Every check has the check number, account number, and branch code printed on it using magnetic ink. A magnetic ink character reader reads the information along with the amount of the check into the bank's information systems so that the check can be cashed. MICR readers can only read one special font, which includes only numbers and a few punctuation marks. They can read characters very quickly and with 100% accuracy. Information printed in magnetic ink is also very secure since it is not possible to change the information by writing over it with a pen. The magnetically printed numbers are also not damaged by folding the check. This often happens. Both the readers use the MICR and the magnetic ink are expensive. And
Great. Great. So remember, once again, we're looking at direct data entry devices. How data, a lot of data, is automatically being transferred into the system. So The other device is a MICR. It is basically used to scan a check. When a check has to, remember, check has to do with money, and you're transferring a lot of money. You're processing a lot of money, sometimes millions, billions, whatever the case may be. Now, in order for that to be processed, a few information has to be inputted. So, the check number, the account number, the branch code, and maybe other personal information. All of those information has to be inputted, transferred, processed, and so on. So, how that gets done is using the MICR reader. Now, on the check, it would have some special fonts. Those fonts are going to include numbers, they're going to include punctuation marks. So there's an image here, yes, here. So at the bottom of a check would have a number. It would be numbers or punctuation marks. And that is basically going to contain the necessary information. If you notice here, let me zoom out back a bit. If you notice here, this is the number for the check number, this is the branch, this is the account number, and so on. So when that information gets scanned, it would be inputted into the system. Now, if you can remember back about the barcode reader, it was inexpensive. You can print it with any ink, you could print it with any printer, and so on. So that was that advantage. But the MICR, it uses magnetic ink. So that's going to make it expensive. And then you're going to need a special type of reader or a special type of scanner in order to scan the information. Remember, we're looking at direct data entry devices, and all of that data is going to be automatically transferred into the system. Alright, so our last device, the sensor. Let's have Nicasia.
Sensor. The music industry uses musical instrument digital interface (MIDI) system. Here, data is input through a piano-type keyboard or by sensors that respond to the instruct. A wide variety of sounds can be generated from one keyboard or set of pads. Sensors are available which responds to a wide variety of signals. They can be used to collect data automatically into a system. For example, the Meteorological Office has weather forecasting systems that collect data from sensors around the world in space. These sensors collect data on temperature, wind, speed, and direction, hours of sunshine, and humidity. This data is processed to help meteorologists to predict the weather. As we know, the forecast is not always accurate, but large amounts of precise data are collected. Information systems use sensors to input data so that the systems can decide what to do. When you approach an automatic door, a sensor tells the system you are there and makes the door open. Regular alarms use sensors to inform the system when doors or windows have been opened or broken. This causes an alarm to sound or the police to be alerted automatically.
Great. So our final direct data entry device is called a sensor, and we have different types of sensors. But the main function of the sensor, once again, is to collect a large amount of data or to collect data and transfer it automatically into the system. So for example, the first one is the musical instrument digital interface. This is used for instruments, guitar, piano, whatever the case may be. When you play that instrument, it gets transferred, the sound gets transferred into the computer. Weather forecasting systems, they use sensors to collect data on the temperature, wind speed, direction, and so on to predict the weather. Doors, they would use sensors to detect persons. Burglar systems would use sensors to detect persons, to detect entry, and they would use that data to either to send alerts or to call the police, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to leave this table for you guys to read. It's basically summarizing the devices that we already looked at, and there's actually some that was not mentioned. For example, this joystick. It was not mentioned in the paragraphs above, so it's important for you to read this table. It summarizes what each device does. Remember, I told you you need to know what each device does, what category they fall under. These are the manual input device category, and direct data entry starts from here. So it's important for you to know what each device does, what category they fall under, what they are used for, so that's the application, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of that device. So in conclusion of what we looked at today we looked at direct data entry device. So we're wrapping up on input devices. Direct data entry device transfers data automatically. What are some of the devices? We looked at Barcode Reader, the smart card. Remember, there are two types, the smart card and the magnetic swipe card. There's the OMR, the OCR, the MICR, and the different types of sensors. Please remember, you have to remember what is a turnaround document also. Any questions before we conclude? All right, no questions. So we're wrapping up input devices. Next week we're gonna start.
Sir,
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir Fazil said a question in the chat. He said if QR codes are considered a direct data entry device.
Yes, it will be, because remember, you are transferring data automatically. You don't have to type in any data. All that data that contains is just like a barcode, just that it's a different type of code. And the information in that code would be transferred when you scan it. Any other questions? Good question. All right, we're 5 minutes into lunch. So these questions here that you're seeing at the bottom here, I'm gonna make it into basically like a homework quiz. So you're gonna see that sometime in the future for you to complete for another form of assessment. Yeah, that's basically it. All right, so if no questions, yes, go
Would we
ahead.
have to do this in a group or can we do it individually?
It's individual.
Okay.
You're gonna see it in your classroom, individually in your classroom. Oh, I thought this was nice.